and then a lot of accountability in your own life, a lot of ways that we need to continue to look at ourselves. Not that we say, well, I'm obviously not saved if I did this, not those kind of things, but just going, am I following the Lord in that? When I do that, is that an area in which that I need to step up and do something a little bit differently, right? So more self-reflection. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Bible 365. I am your host, Kathy Carter. I'm reading through the Bible in a year. Today is day 217. It's a good reading day. It was a good day, and I'm wearing my favorite shirt. So I just want to show you my shirt. Okay, ready? That's like my favorite shirt that I own, because if you know me, you know that Oreos are like my favorite thing. And I just think it's funny because, I do fitness and I like Oreos. Anyway, so today is it's 217. It's windy as usual. So story my life back here. August 4th, our reading is 2 Chronicles 36, 1 through 5, 2 Kings 23, 31 through 24, 4, and then Jeremiah 22, Jeremiah 25, 1 through 14, and Jeremiah 26. I put them in numerical order. They're actually not in numerical order in our reading, but I put them that way because I feel like it's just easier to understand if we put them in that order. Okay, it is a bigger reading, and it's history. I love history. I love facts, straight information, not trying to dive in and understand what he's saying in prophecies, although there are some prophecies, but I feel like they're really, really straightforward, and everything is relatively easy to understand today. So if you have never been with me before, I'm reading through the Bible in 1 year using the chronological Bible reading plan from oneyearbibleonline.com. And it is a free reading plan that you can download and use with your own Bible. So I encourage you to read first. I really want you to read first. I think that is everything. However, if this is your first time ever going through the Bible, I'm thinking to myself, I'm just glad you're here and you're listening, and then I hope you get excited about it. And then next year on January 1st, when we start all over again, you will start and actually read and be in and read the actual words of it, because each time it opens up these new doors and it helps you understand the Lord more, which again is the whole intent of doing this, is just so we have the better relationship with the Lord who created us, right? The one that we follow. Okay, so here we are. We are in the time of Kings. So I don't want to go back too far. If you've never been here, I'd love if you went back and sort of all the way back to Genesis, which I started on January 1st. But if you are here, we are now in the time of Kings, much later in the time of Kings. The year is around the low 600s, like 609, 610, something like that. I got Daisy on full blast, even though my Brinkles is inside the house, but she is just, she's seeing something that she's excited about. So hopefully we can move on, even though we can hear her barking. Okay, so we are starting our reading in 2 Chronicles 36. Israel has been taken by Assyria, and it's been about 100 years or so since Israel's been taken by Syria. And prophets have come, and they keep telling Judah, you guys better get right with the Lord. Last king did. Josiah was our last king, and he got right with the Lord, right? He found the book of the law and the prophets, and he was reading it to everybody, and he cleansed the temple, and he did all these, had celebrations, had the Passover again, and all these great things. Well, unfortunately, he died. And now we have Jehoahaz, and he was 23 years old when he became king. He only reigned in Jerusalem for 3 months. So after 3 months, King Necho from Egypt came in and he took him away. Now, here's one of the things that I wanted to note that I thought was really cool. He is Jeremiah's grandson. So not only is he Hezekiah's relative, but he's also Jeremiah's relative. So he's relatives of not just the kings, but also of the prophet Jeremiah. So I thought that was really cool. So he should have been amazing. And unfortunately, he was not. He did evil in the sight of the Lord. King Necho took him away, although I don't think it's necessarily because he did evil in the sight of the Lord. But when King Necho took him away, so he took him away from his land, took him to the land of Egypt, and in the land of Egypt he died. Before he did that, right, when he came in and he took him away from the land, he actually replaced him with his brother, whose name was Eliakim. That was his brother, but he renamed him Jehoahaz. Not sure why, but he renamed him Jehoahaz, and he became the king over Judah. And once he was king of Judah, King Nepho instilled a tax on them. And so he paid this tax. And maybe that was why he took Jehoiakim out, because maybe Jehoiakim wasn't going to pay that price. I'm sorry, Jehoahaz wasn't going to pay that price. So he put Jehoiakim in his place. I don't know. But what we do know is that he did pay that price, right? So he put a tax on the people, and the people came up and paid the price. Okay, and now we move on to Jehoiakim was 25 when he became king. He reigned for 11 years, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord. So he also was not a good king. He was not a king that was following the Lord. His brother was also not a good king that was following the Lord. So now here we are again in this little chunk of time where Israel isn't following the Lord again. So then we go down to Jeremiah. So this looks like it is talking about, it says it's for Judah's kings, but let's find out who it is that he could be talking about. He says in verse 1, this is what the Lord says, go down to the palace of the king of Judah and proclaim this message. So he's saying this to Jeremiah. He's like, hey, calling out to Jeremiah, go down, proclaim this message to Judah. By the way, it's not going to be a good message. So remember I told you about these prophets, these poor guys, they have it rough. So he said, it's not going to be a good message. And he says, hear the word of the Lord, king of Judah, who sits on David's throne, you, your officials, and your people who come through these gates. So he wants everyone to hear. This is what the Lord says. He says, do what is right and just, rescue from the hand of the oppressor, the one who has been robbed, do no wrong or violence to the foreigner, the fatherless, or the widow, and don't shed innocent blood in his place. Okay, that seems, I feel like all of us would hear this and be like, yes, that is what I'm doing. I don't think anyone thinks they're a bad king. I mean, I could be crazy. But I don't think I think when we, I'm going off on a tangent here, but I think when we don't follow the Lord completely, right? I think we start excusing ourselves, right? So like we start coming up with reasons why this needs to be done, right? Like I know Christians who we would separate on issues because they would believe that issue is right, and we would believe that issue is wrong. And so we would have this separation. Well, who's right and who's wrong, right? Who is actually following the Lord? They both think that they are, but it's this shady area, right? I think that starts to happen, and then it just progresses. It gets further and further and further, and then all of a sudden you're so far away from the Lord, you don't even realize that what you're doing is evil, right? Like, so you've just continued to justify yourself. That's what I'm saying to myself, because I'm thinking to myself, it's got to be hard when someone comes to you and says, follow the Lord, and I think you think to yourself, well, I am. And so just shut up and leave me alone. Like, how come you keep coming to me? And I'm doing all the right things, and I'm sacrificing, and we have the temple, right? Like all of these things. So I want to be patient with these kings, because I feel just as if maybe they're not understanding. But the other side of it is when someone comes to you and says you are doing the wrong thing, I think you've got to evaluate, right? I think that you need to have an evaluation on yourself. When you go to services on Sunday and you hear do this and do that, and like, you have to evaluate, am I doing those things? Right? Or am I not doing those things? Am I pushing the boundaries just a little bit? Right? I think we need that self-reflection. And I'm going to tell you too, I think we need more self-reflection, because I really do think for the most part, people are not talking in our lives. So I've been a part of a Christian community for a pretty long time, and I was in a church for a really long time. And there's not a whole lot of rebuking going on until it's like way overboard. And then you're like, why didn't you come earlier, right? Like, until it's sort of like in disaster mode. And then it's so far away, right? That it's hard sort of to backpedal back, because you would need a full change of things that are going on. So I would love if there was more of that, like some more accountability in relationships. And then a lot of accountability in your own life. A lot of ways that we need to continue to look at ourselves. Not that we say, well, I'm obviously not saved if I did this. Not those kind of things, but just going, am I following the Lord in that? When I do that, is that an area in which that I need to step up and do something a little bit differently, right? So more self-reflection. That went way off target. Okay. So, because we are just right now, we're in where he's talking to the kings, and he's talking to the king that's on the throne at this time. So he says in verse 4, for if you are careful to carry out these commands, this is always my if and thens that I love. If you're careful to carry out these commands, then kings who sit on David's throne will come through the gates of this palace, riding in chariots on horses, accompanied by, right? Like good things are going to happen. But if you do not obey these commands, declares the Lord, I swear by myself, he can't swear by anything more important than himself, that this place will become a ruin. How many times do I have to tell you? Verse 6, for this is what the Lord says about Judah. Though you are like Gilead to me. And I want to note, so he says, though you're like Gilead to me, I'm going to make you a wasteland. I'm going to send destroyers against you. I had to look up with Gilead, like, what is it about Gilead? And I think it is that he loves Gilead. If Gilead was not one of the tribes, but it sort of, I don't know if you guys remember me talking about it pretty extensively in the past, but it looks like they essentially got their own land. It was in the tribe of Manasseh, right? So Gilead was in the tribe of Manasseh. But a lot of the time of the judges we spent in Gilead, a lot of times in Joshua and in Deuteronomy, they spent in Gilead. And so they were talking about the Gileadites and the nation of Gilead, which was part of the nation of Israel, right? They came to the defense in a lot of ways. And so it seemed to be a good area. And I think that means that the Lord loved Gilead, right? But he wants to, though you are like Gilead to me, though I love you, though you hold a special place in my heart, I have to destroy you because you're not listening. I don't have a choice. I gave you time. I gave you options. And then it says people from many nations are going to pass by and they're kind of going to mock this area. And it says because they have forsaken the covenant of the Lord and have worshipped and served other gods. And then it says, don't weep for that king that is here. It says, don't weep for the dead king or mourn his loss. Rather, weep bitterly for him who is exiled. So he's talking about the king, Jehoahaz, the king that was taken off to Egypt. And it says, because he's never going to return or see this land again. So weep for him because he's gone and he's never coming back. In verse 13, we follow up and it says, woe to him who builds this palace by unrighteousness, his upper rooms by injustice. Do you understand what this is going back to what I was saying? Like we slip away piece by piece by piece. So at this point, he's getting, it sounds very literal to me. It sounds like what he's trying to do is he's trying to build his I want to say his castle, the place where he's going to live. He wants to build that up, maybe like Solomon's temple, right? Maybe he wants it to look like Solomon's palace, right? He wants it to look beautiful and large and big, and I'm the best king that ever there was. And so he's doing it unrighteously. So he's actually getting people in, and he's not paying them for their labor, right? So he says, I'm going to build myself. The king says, I'm going to build myself a great palace with large windows, decorated in red. And it says, does it make you a king to have more and more cedar? Like, is that the only way that people are going to know that you're king is by having this amazing palace? I didn't give you the ability to make this great palace, right? And it says did your father, that's why I think he's talking about at this point Jehoiakim. And he says, did your father have food and drink? Didn't he have food and drink? He did what was right and just, and it went well with him. I don't know if he did or didn't have a big palace, but what he did have is he had food and he had a righteous kingdom, right? And he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, right? He defended the cause of the poor and the needy, so all went well. He did what was right and just, so all went well. Is that not what it means to know me? So now we're going to go back to the basics. What does it mean to know the Lord? What does it look like to know the Lord? It looks like doing what is right and just, defending the cause of the poor and needy. Look how much he gives to that. Look how much right here. Do what is right and just, right? So be righteous, do what is right, which would be in the eyes of God. Be justice to people, right? Like, so note what is right and wrong all amongst your people, right? And then defend the cause of the poor and needy. Don't let the what we would now call the disenfranchised go without help, right? Defend them, honor them, lift them up. Do what is right for them as well. That's what it means to know me, because he says to do that. And then when you do that, it will go well with you. He says, all went well with him. He said that twice. So he was doing what was right to the Lord, and then all went well. That's what it means to know the Lord, right? To do what is right, to defend the poor and the needy, and then all will go well according to the Lord, right? That is what it means to do right. All right. And then it says, therefore, we're in verse 18. Therefore, this is what the Lord says about Jehoiakim, son of Josiah of Judah. They're not going to mourn for him. Nobody's going to care. His brothers, his sisters, his family, his everyone, no one's going to care. And he's going to get dragged away, and he's going to be thrown outside the gates of Jerusalem. So he's not even going to have a good death. Like he's not going to get buried with his eternal rest with the rest of his family and his descendants, right? Or I'm sorry, the people that came before him. He's going to get dragged out of Jerusalem. So it's a bad way to go. And it says, then all of your allies are going to be crushed. I warned you when you felt secure, but you said, I'm not going to listen. He's been warned. Nobody say he hasn't been warned. All right, now we're moving on to Jeremiah 26. It says, early in the reign of Jehoiakim. This one is a lot of really basic stuff, I think. So I'm just going to read and maybe not add too much. Early in the reign of Jehoiakim, son of Josiah, king of Judah, the word came from the Lord. So Jeremiah is bringing the word. He's like, go in the town and shout this out to all the people. Not great. Perhaps they're going to listen. Maybe they won't. This is what the Lord says. If you do not listen to me and follow my law, which I have set before you, and if you do not listen to the words of my servants, the prophets, Jeremiah, whom I have sent to you again and again, though you haven't listened, then I'm going to make this house like Shiloh and this city a curse among the nations of the earth. As soon as Jeremiah finished telling the people this, they commanded the people to seize him and say, you must die. Why would you say that against this city? They are more worried about the city than they are worried about the word of the Lord. When your possessions are more worthwhile and more valuable to you than the word of the Lord, you are in trouble. I'm not saying anything would be easy to be taken away. I don't hear me saying any of that. Again, I'm just saying, remember what I said before, like kind of being accountable to yourself. Beware how much space in your heart your possessions take up. We can all say really easily, like, no big deal. But I watch time and time again, and this is going to get a little bit personal. I watch time and time again where churches that I know and I love are more worried about protecting their reputation or protecting the fact that they're going to get in trouble than they're worried about the word of the Lord. And that's how they fall apart, right? Like we must let the chips fall where they may. And I say that knowing that there have been times in my life where the chips have had to fall. Like when I turned away from the Lord, like after I was in a relationship with the Lord, not necessarily before, but after I was in a relationship with the Lord, I definitely did things that were not good. Like I want to go as far as to say awful. And the chips needed to fall. And I couldn't protect myself over the value of the Lord. And believe me, I wanted to. Like I still always want to protect myself, right? Like I still always want to protect myself. I want to protect my kids. Like if my kids do something wrong, I want to protect my kids from it. But that's not what we are called to do. We are called to listen and to turn and to not worry about the consequences. They're going to be what they're going to be according to what the Lord says they're going to be. And sometimes they might be really, really awful. And sometimes they might not. The Lord might say, like he's going to say in here, like, if you return to me, I'm not going to do this. So sometimes we just need to return. Like he just wants our hearts. And he's like, I'm not going to punish you because really what I wanted from you was your heart. And you gave me that. And so I'm satisfied. And then sometimes it might be something else. And so we have to be prepared for that when we turn from the Lord. And we don't want to keep walking away because we're too scared to turn back, right? So we have to turn back. So I want to go to Jeremiah because they took him and they grabbed him and they said, let's kill him. And of course, that's not going to go well. And it says in verse 12, it says, Jeremiah said to all the officials, the Lord sent me to prophesy against this house and this city and all the things that you have heard. Now reform your ways and your actions and obey the Lord. Then the Lord will relent. He will not bring disaster that he has pronounced against you. As for me, I'm in your hands. Do with me whatever you think is right. But be assured, if you do put me to death, right, you're going to bring the guilt of innocent blood on yourselves and on this city and on those who live in it. Now, I say over and over and over again, it is all connected, right? So we are all enmeshed with each other. So they're bringing wrath on themselves, on the city, which is the land, the area, right, and everything in it, and on all the people that live in it. So it is all three of those things that are going to have to pay for the leaders turning away from what they're supposed to turn towards. It says, then the officials and the people say that the man should not be sentenced to death, right? They went to the priest and they said, don't sentence him to death. And then we're going to go down to verse 19, where he says, did Hezekiah, king of Judah, or anyone else in Judah put him to death? Did not Hezekiah fear the Lord and turn back? Like, this is what Hezekiah did. He said, oh my gosh, I can't believe I need to turn back to the Lord, right? Lost my page, sorry. And then here we go. We have two other people that also did this same thing. One turned out well, one did not turn out as well. He says, Uriah, son of Shemaiah from Kiriath Jearim, was another man who prophesied. When King Jehoiakim and all his officers and officials heard his words, the king was determined to put him to death, but Uriah heard of it and fled in fear to Egypt. Then they brought Uriah out of Egypt and took him to the king, who struck him down with a sword. Okay, did not go well for him. Furthermore, Ahikam, son of Shaphan, supported Jeremiah, and so he was not handed over to the people to be put to death. So Uriah was a prophet who, unfortunately, did not have as good of an outcome as Jeremiah is having at this moment, because someone came to his defense. Going down to 2 Kings 24, verse 1, during his reign, Nebuchadnezzar invaded the land. And then, so Nebuchadnezzar came in, and then Jehoiakim was his vassal, which essentially means like, I will serve you if you protect me. So he was that for 3 years. And then on the 4th year, he rebelled. So it said, then he said, I'm going to bring everybody to come in and to destroy Judah in accordance with the word of the Lord proclaimed by his servants, the prophets. So that's what he's coming in to do. Jeremiah 25, verse 1. The word came to Jeremiah concerning all the people of Judah in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, son of Josiah, which was the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar. So we're sort of going back a little bit. Jeremiah the prophet said to all the people of Judah and all those living in Jerusalem, for 23 years I have been your prophet. He says, and the word of the Lord has come to me, and I have spoken to you again and again, but you haven't listened. How many times must 23 years? Have you guys done anything for 23 years? I don't know if I've had friendships for 23 years. 23, I have had a marriage for more than 23 years, but I don't know, it's a really long time. And he's been constantly going to these kings and going, it's not going to go well with you. It's not going to go well with you. It's not going to go well with you. How many times do I have to tell you? How many times do I have to teach you this lesson? And they're not going to listen. And they say, turn now each of you from your evil ways and your evil practices, and you can stay in the land the Lord gave to you. Do not follow other gods. But you didn't listen to me, and you've aroused God's anger. You've brought harm onto yourselves. So you did this to yourself. Therefore, the Lord Almighty says, because you have not listened to my words, I'm going to summon the people of the north and my servant Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. You're going to be there for 70 years. So one, he calls Nebuchadnezzar his servant, who is not an Israelite, right? Who in many ways we would say certainly doesn't follow or serve the Lord. But in this instance, he is using him for the plan to take down Judah, because Judah has not been following the Lord. So Nebuchadnezzar is becoming the servant of God through this, right? But then, because of the wicked deeds he does against Israel, the Lord is going to pay him back, and he's also going to be destroyed, right? So the land of Babylon is going to be destroyed for the injuries that they cause on Judah, right? On the people of God. So here we go. Like, how can he use someone who, for his purpose, right? And then he punishes them because they're hurting his people, and his heart is already turned away from the Lord. And so he's using him in some ways to do what he would already have had in his heart to do. And he's using him to take down Judah, and then he's going to do the same thing. He's going to destroy him to lift Judah back up again. But it's going to be 70 years. And then he says, when 70 years are fulfilled, I'm going to punish the king of Babylon. I'm going to bring on that land all the things I've spoken against it. And then they themselves will be enslaved by many nations and great kings. I'm going to repay them according to their deeds and the work of their hands. And then that's where we're ending today. It's been a lot of action going on. So we're going to see what happens tomorrow. I think we're going to continue in Jeremiah. We still got a lot of Jeremiah to go. So we're going to continue in Jeremiah and in his prophecies and in some other areas. Until then, I want you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell for notifications every day. And then keep reading, and I will see you guys next time.